You're killing me, Smalls.
To infinity and beyond!
Welcome to the What the What podcast, ladies and gentlemen. It's Morphin Time!
Go, go, Power Ranger!
Dragon Zord! Yeah, even though that Zord didn't appear in this movie. He was the White Ranger.
Should have.
He should have. The Green Ranger was awesome. Welcome to the What the What podcast. I'm Eric Creech, joined, as always, by, well, usually with Kyle and Ashby. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they have episodes without me. Sometimes we have episodes without Ashby. Sometimes we have episodes without Kyle. Like last week, I had episodes without both of them.
That's true.
That's right.
And I'm glad you're back. Y'all are fantastic. So we don't want to lose that at all.
Glad you missed us.
I'm glad the episode went well, though.
You did miss us.
Yeah.
It was our highest ranking episode of all time.
Yes, we're peering into the future.
Yes.
Come on, we're the Ross and the Joey to your Chandler.
Yeah. I'm the
Could y'all
couch.
be any more Ross and Joey?
I'm that couch that stands in the way on the corner and has no idea what to do.
Yes. That couch is comfortable, by the way. I was in D.C. a few weeks ago, and they had the one with the Friends Experience exhibit in D.C. for about 2 months, and we got it a couple of weeks after they arrived. I got to see all the sets and props and stuff, and you probably heard me talk about this on last week's episode, but y'all weren't here, so I'm just going to tell you that couch is very comfortable.
Nice.
The recliners, Joey and Chandler's recliners were very comfortable.
Isn't there an episode where they try not to leave them?
Yes. They literally they call in food and they tell them to ring Monica and Rachel's apartment, so they can let them in. And Joey's like, well, what if we have to go to the bathroom? And Chandler's like, well, I'll call and cancel the drinks. It's a great episode. Anyway, we're not talking about Friends this week.
I mean, we are kind of talking about friends.
Just different friends.
The power of friendship, right?
The power of friendship, yes. Mm-hmm. We are talking about the Power Rangers, more accurately, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie.
1995.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Very excited. Before we jump into all that, listeners, we want to thank you for joining us. Please subscribe to us on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever it is you get your podcast. Please rate and review us. We accept 5-star entries. If you give us 4 stars or lower, then no Ninjetti power for you.
No.
Womp, womp,
You die
womp.
in the crystals.
That's right. Yeah.
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 Whatever that means.
Yeah.
And while
That's
you're
what happened
rating,
to Zordon.
yeah, while you're rating and reviewing us by giving us a 5-star rating, you can also subscribe to us on our social media channels. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. By searching What Media,
All one word.
you can find us there. Also, you can search for WTW_media on Twitter. Ashby usually keeps up with the Twitter account. Sometimes I do. Kyle just discovered he had a Twitter account a couple of days ago. So I mean,
Thankfully, my phone was still logged into it. Thankfully,
he's like, oh yeah, I have the Twitter. Okay, cool. It's not just the disease. All right. So
that too.
moving on. Today's topic is, as I mentioned earlier, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie, and I'm so excited to talk about this because this movie was like, okay, so this movie came out when I was 9. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the television show, aired on the Fox Kids network, and starting in August of 1993. And to say it was a pop culture phenomenon in the early to mid 90s is an understatement. They literally had a little stage, like all the Rangers were going to be on Universal Studios stage, and they backed up traffic in Los Angeles, because people were going to see the Power Rangers. I mean, it was like out of nowhere. So they literally greenlit a movie quickly into like the second season. They're like, okay, Fox is involved. They're gonna make this a big thing. They were gonna do filming in Australia. They had a script, and yeah, so it became this big thing. But there were some issues. You'll notice that if you were a fan of the original Power Rangers, 3 of them are missing. And as Ashby discovered,
Yeah.
I got this text like, wait a minute. some of these Rangers are different.
They're all mixed up.
They're all mixed up. What happened? So midway through the second season, Austin St. John, Dewey Trang, and Walter Jones, who played Jason, Trini, and Zach respectively, they wanted a pay raise. The Power Rangers was a non-union show, and so they were getting paid very little money to film 4 or 5 episodes of television a week.
I feel like that's pretty frowned upon these days.
Pretty
in Hollywood.
frowned upon these days for sure. And they said, if you don't, we're just going to walk. I mean, and producers called their bluff and said, okay, well, we found 3 new Power Rangers. And they
Strike a trot.
Karen Ashley, who replaced Trini as the Yellow Ranger, she said whenever they hired the 3 of us, literally in the same sentences, they said, welcome to the show. We're going to film about 6 more weeks, try to get some more episodes in the can for the rest of the season, and then you're flying to Australia to film the movie. And wait, there's a movie?
Good luck.
Good luck. So I've been doing a lot of talking here. Kyle, I want you to, help me. You put some space in between me talking, because otherwise I'll talk about this for an hour.
No, I want to see how long you can go.
I was going to say, like, you're knowledgeable versus me saying,
okay.
like, what, sort of,
So before I jump into my memories and what I associate with this movie, I want to hear, like, what about this movie? Like, do you remember watching this movie as a kid? What memories do you have of it?
I feel like, especially by 1995, I know for sure I saw this in theaters, whereas some other movies are questionable if we did or not. I was right there. I was 8, so right at that age of, I love this thing. They finally made this thing that I love, and they're taking it to a movie theater. Like, so they took something that we love to watch, and not vice versa, not just, hey, Batman's kind of popular over here, let's throw a Batman movie out. They just said, no, we're taking this directly from television and making a movie. And I remember being a kid and just seeing it in movie theaters. Obviously, I didn't know the difference of, man, they put a lot more money into this. It was just, this looks so much more like real, better, like high def stuff. Something that stood out to me too, and even as an adult, I don't remember a ton ever on the show of like the Power Rangers fighting at night. A lot of it usually was in the bright sun, fighting out, in open areas, everything else.
I have questions about that, but we'll get to that.
Well, we have a lot of scenes where all of a sudden they're just out here in the dark, and I feel like because of that, their costumes look even cooler because it reminds me almost have like Batman would be in the shadows and everything else. And on screen it plays off well, because they have the same ideally basic costumes, but they're beefed up for the movies. In television, it's just like spandex type suits with a plastic, whatever helmet, which looked cool. Don't get me wrong, I'm not making fun of it and saying it's cheap, but they buffed it all up to be like rubber, everything else, more of like the bat suit that we would see with Batman coming from like a spandex type thing to this. Can
I address that for a little bit? Mm-hmm. So for those of you who have not listened to our season 1 Mighty Morphin Power Rangers episode from early 2020, I suggest you go watch it, or listen to it first of all. But secondly, the Power Rangers show was created by using Super Sentai footage from Japan. Super Sentai was a long-running television franchise over there, and they had different iterations of this franchise each year. Power Rangers was used using Zoo Ranger Super Sentai footage. And so what they would do is they would film scenes with the teenagers who were unmorphed. They would probably get an unmorphed fight scene in there. They would do their own stunts. And then whenever they morphed, they would use the Japanese footage and just dub over with American audio. So the movie didn't do that. The movie used all original footage, which was a big departure from the television show, first of all. But also they were using the same ideas that the Japanese Sentai footage was using. So the upcoming 3rd season was using, I think it was Ninja Ranger Sentai, which had the ninja animal Zords. But they didn't use the footage for the movie. And because they were not using the ninja costumes, they were still using the original Zoo Ranger costumes. They were using more and more American footage in the show and only using the Japanese footage whenever they were in the Zords. So they were using less of that, and more American footage. So this movie was all I mean, I say American footage, but it was filmed in Australia. But it was all original footage and not taken from the Japanese Zoo Ranger or any other iterations of Super Sentai. Mm-hmm. So anyway, you can. If you had something else, I just wanted to make sure that the difference there.
Well, I feel like too, it was something that all of a sudden they took to another level. Everything visually was better because the same way too, you're talking about something that's recorded on much higher, quality equipment. You're also not just taking footage from some previous thing and throwing it on your television. In the same way, there's long story behind Zordon leaving, or being fired or whatever in the earlier series too, where they still used his image and, used a different voice cast in later on in the series.
Literally, yeah, they only used one. The guy who shot as Zordon, they only filmed it for one day and used the same footage and then used a different voice actor for the next 6 years.
And they just made it work. But because of that footage, they couldn't throw that into the movie because quality was just been way too poor. So all of a sudden, you do see Zordon like as a child, he looks different. Because it's a person with makeup, prosthetics, every stuff. Different. And so even as an adult rewatching it this week, it definitely threw me off a little bit, which made me question a lot and go down the rabbit hole of Zordon, which is a mess. But I don't know. I remember that something, and not trying to jump all around and take anything away, but something that was always in my favorite sense is they lose their powers. Mm-hmm. Zordon's pretty much dying. And the only way they can do it is to find possibly any other power that, like, their Ranger power could have helped keep him alive, is this super, like, hidden whatever historical power, like, off on some island that nobody's ever been able to capture. So they go and they work on this and they work it out. But they get new costumes. Like, yeah, like they're working it out. Like,
it doesn't make any sense.
I'm just trying to like push past all
first of all,
the power seems
first of all, hold your tongue and your privilege there, okay? All right.
I'm trying to jump past all of this just to say like their ninja suits were amazing.
Yes.
I absolutely loved them. Like as a child, I was like, okay, cool. I probably can never get a helmet. But that looks amazing.
Yes.
And like, I wanted that.
We still won't.
We've talked about that. Like if we
100%,
ever
I want the yellow ninja costume for like Halloween. Let me actually Google that right now.
You can find them. It's on Etsy at
they
least.
Even have they even have Green Ranger ninja costumes,
which didn't exist because he's White Ranger.
Yes.
I'm totally like next year GalaxyCon. It's a little too late to do it for this one. I say we cosplay as Ninjetti Power Rangers. Because I would gladly spend money on that.
I'm down.
I don't look good in spandex, but I could wear that.
But I can wear a hoodie.
Yeah,
yeah.
Like,
I mean, it's basically hammer pants. Okay, we can rock it.
But I think that stood out to me too because of everything else I liked at the time. You think Three Ninjas came out a couple years before that? You got three kids wearing like the same type of material with masks or whatever.
Ninja stuff was big in the 90s. I mean, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were were also around at that time, and they'd already had their 3 movies at that time.
And you had like foot soldiers in those movies that had similar type outfits and everything else. But for the first time, you're seeing Power Rangers be something more than these like helmet, everything else, crazy powers. It's like now, like these are what you expect ninjas to look like, and so I've always wanted a costume ever since. Like,
so let me expound on why that. I mean, one possible reason why that took place. The director really wanted to see the actors' faces.
He did.
They even had different mock-ups of the helmets with the visors cut out so you can see, because he wanted to see them emoting and trying to have that emotional connection, because when they have their helmets on, I mean, it's usually just the stunt actors.
Well, that goes back to what Ashby was saying before we started recording, is she never realized how much they talked with their hands, pretty much. Like, anytime they talked, it was like hand movements everywhere. Like, oh, you're over there 10 feet. Instead of running to you, let me do 10 back handsprings to get to you.
There were so many flips in this movie.
There were.
And the other thing is, normally during the television show, it was stunt actors in those suits because it was the Japanese footage.
Right.
It wasn't. So the American actors were not 100% used to being in the suits themselves. And for this movie, they redid the suits that you mentioned, but they added about 40 pounds of material. So they're trying to get used to brand new suits. They've worn the suits before because in season 2, they actually show them without their helmets on in scenes and stuff. But now it's all on them. It's not just any stunt work or any Japanese footage or anything like that. It's all on them at this point, and they're wearing the suits. They're the ones doing all the hand movements. And
there was a stunt team involved, but at the same time, they are actually acting with helmets this time.
Yes.
Right.
So the ninja costumes, which I agree are 100% awesome, and they brought them back for season 3 of the show too. I'll explain that in a second. But the ninja costumes allowed the viewers to see their faces and allow the actors to actually emote with their faces and with their emotions and stuff.
If you've never gone, you can go look. I wish I could remember the guy's name. I follow him on like Facebook and maybe Instagram. But the production company behind these movie suits, there's a great picture online where they, I guess in their workshop, have all the suits together, like multiple copies of the suits, and then they're all like the team that worked on it's there. And then there's like 4 or 5, I think 4 helmets per character all on the ground. Mm-hmm. And you do see some without like the visors, without the mouthpieces, everything else. And then you can go see pictures like where they did test some scenes where they recorded everything with the helmets. And they're like, well, let's try it without these visors so you can see the actors.
Yes.
And it looks so dumb.
It looks awful.
Because you realize these helmets are huge. Like,
right.
You know, in person, like they're not abnormal size to the body and the rest of the suit. But when you see the person's face inside this giant plastic like helmet,
right.
It looks awful.
That makes no sense because their face is like a couple inches within the outer. Like, yeah.
So one thing I should have mentioned at the top of the episode: this movie is non-canon to the television show,
and I did not know that until 2 days ago.
I didn't know that until I texted Eric last night.
Yeah.
So a couple of changes you see. First of all, the villains before Ivan Ooze shows up, you have Rita, Lord Zed, Goldar, who are all in the television show, but then you have another character named Mordant, who's never appeared in a television show. He probably replaced Squat, Babu, and Finster all in one, like kind of combined them all into one little minor sidekick evil character for comic relief.
Right.
All the Rangers who were in the show at this point are the same actors, obviously. We talked about the 3 who left and how they got replaced. Bulk and Skull.
Yeah. Remember them from the TV show.
They are in this movie. And it's funny because I was watching or listening to a great YouTube video on the production of this movie, and Jason Narvey, who plays Skull, talked about how we had like 3 scenes, but they flew us over anyway. So we'd show up, and they're like, "Oh, we don't need you today." So they went out and they just had fun in Australia for 3 weeks, or ever how long it took to film the movie.
Nice.
But they only weren't needed for like the first scene where they did the skydiving, another scene where they're helping like with the kid and like the zombie stuff, and then at the very end. But they're not really in the movie that much.
Right. Quick question.
Yes.
Now that you brought up skydiving, did the actors actually skydive?
Yes.
So all of them agreed that they would do it.
Yes.
And they jumped out of planes.
Yes.
Amazing.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Dedication.
Yes.
I knew they were really
looked that
like
up,
at least
and that was all them. They were like, yeah, I mean, they were expecting to want to do their own stunts anyway. They're like, yeah, we'll skydive.
Right.
Sure.
You talked about a little bit on the Mighty Ducks episode, though, about around that time and how things were becoming popular and extreme. And the main thing, again, first off, jumping out of a plane is extreme.
Right.
But then you also had Tommy that like jumped out skydove with like
with a snowboard.
With a
attached to him.
Yeah.
Which as a child,
Landed
that was like someone
with the
getting
board.
that. Yeah, that was so much cooler to me.
Yeah.
To be
So you talk about like how ridiculous like Power Rangers in this movie can be. So in Power Rangers, the 6 Rangers are always like, they're always doing something for the community. They're teaching their own classes at the health or the community center.
Yeah,
They got
Kimberly teaches gymnastics.
Tommy has his own karate class.
Yes.
In the original lineup, Zach was teaching hip hop keto, which the actor created. But they would always be doing fundraisers for the community. Like I remember in the season 2 premiere, they were doing something with 4-wheelers and ATVs to raise money for something.
Yeah.
And at the beginning of this movie, they're jumping out of an airplane trying to hit the target to raise money for something else.
Yes.
Like no kid has this time for that
And
much
then
time for any kind of.
rollerblading.
They go rollerblading. I mean,
Like, how old are these kids supposed to be?
I mean, they're in high school. They're in high
See,
school.
I don't believe that. They look 28. Okay.
Something
Where are their parents? They're just in a jungle trying to find some power.
Their parents do show up in season 1. Like they have Parents' Day at the youth film. That's the only time we ever see their parents.
Why are you never home? Why are you always hanging out with
I
them?
love how you're like doing this with your hands because that's
Why
where they
are
got
you
it.
never home?
Funnily enough, the comic series addresses that. Like Zach, he had an argument with his parents, and like, you're never home. We're worried about you. Are you doing drugs? Are you doing this? And Zach goes to the command center. He's like, yeah, my parents think I'm on drugs. I'll have to deal with that later. I have to sneak out so I can come in here and fight evil with you guys. By the way, if you're a fan of comic books and if you think you would enjoy, like if you enjoyed the Power Rangers as a kid and you're a fan of comic books, go check out the comic series.
Well, you said comics is a whole lot better too.
Oh my
It's not as
goodness,
cheesy.
and it's dark too.
Yeah.
It gets dark, but it's so much fun. Anyway,
Well, I love how too you were talking about the skydiving. The announcer, like there on the microphone, is like, "Here comes professional skydiver Tommy, professional skydiver Kimberly." Like all professional.
They're 17.
As the little kid
but there's
turns around,
17-year-olds who normally and typily drive giant robots to fight
That's true.
evil
Yeah, but
monsters.
other people don't know that.
They
I'm just
don't
saying
know
I would
that,
have some
but
questions.
this little kid turns and looked at his firefighter dad. That's like, he's like, "I thought I did pretty good." It's like, "Dad, you landed in the parking lot. Look at these kids." Like.
Better than Bulk and Skull. They landed in a construction site.
That's true.
If I was that dad, I would be like, they're children, okay? Like,
I made a note in my phone
They don't
while I
have
was
full-time
watching.
jobs.
I was like, where in the world did these kids shop?
Yes.
Because first off, they've got color match to their Ranger costumes.
White shorts.
Well, white shorts is a thing.
khaki
peak
shorts.
90s.
But-
peak Gap 90s.
But jumping out of an airplane, each one of them had color matched for their
Sleeveless flannel
things.
shirts.
Tommy's-
because obviously.
Tommy's got a white vest shirt.
Yes.
Yeah, they start rollerblading, and it's like I felt bad for Tommy. It's like he can't fall. Like grass stains would kill his wardrobe.
yes.
So he can't do that.
He was better off being the Green
Jason
Ranger.
David Franks would never, first of all.
Or he would never
Never.
fall, first of all.
Exactly.
But even when they go rollerblading next scene, they have rollerblades that match their skating, knee pads, and all their other pads match like what their character is. First off, people of Andrew Grove are idiots because it's like
Yes,
if you're
they-
used to these 5 different or 6 different color things.
They never call in the military, first of all.
Yeah, first off. And then
Well,
you see
actually,
this-
that's wrong. In season 5 of Power Rangers Turbo, the National Guard was seen at one point. I'm like, wow, they do care about this community that's constantly attacked by evil aliens from the moon.
It's like the whole argument about like Superman Clark Kent is just the difference in the glasses or whatever. And it's like, yeah, man, this whole town is protected by these Power Rangers, and there's a pink one and a yellow one and a red one. And then it's like, and there's these kids that like hang out. One of them's always dressed in pink and one of them's always dressed in red. Wait a second.
Wait a second. Some other notable differences between the movie, between the canon in the movie and the canon in the show. The morphing sequence, which seems like a minor thing. But in the show, it would always be Tommy first. It would go white, black, pink, blue, yellow, red. And they did it out of order. And plus, Tommy in the show would yell out Tiger Zord. To that was his name of his Zord, the Tiger Zord. Okay, in the movie he yelled out White Tiger, which I thought as a kid was like, what? White Tiger? What?
I'm sorry. It sounds like a brand of like
Yes.
hookah or something.
I'm just
Or,
thinking like Zoolander. It's like one of his master poses. White tiger.
Let me get that white tiger.
Yeah.
It's probably a beer or something. I mean,
Well, it's maybe
or like an energy drink or something. Like
thinking like White
an
Owls,
IPA
cigars.
from
Or
like
an
Durham.
e-cig. Let me get that
Yeah.
white tiger.
Yeah. It's the great
some
up.
CBD oil. I mean,
It's the great up from White Owl cigars or
Man.
whatever.
They some of the Rangers have different weapons and different functions on their helmets. Like I know the Yellow Ranger had like the little flashlight, but like you mentioned, they don't do a lot of episodes at night. So
No.
this was a new thing where they're actually morphed at night. So that's
Well, the Red Ranger has like
like a little scanner.
yeah, he looks like
The
Cyclops.
Blue Ranger had like a little whip that he could. I don't know. I mean,
I think it wasn't used. The Blue Ranger though did have like I want to say it was like a little satellite dish that like came up and like rotated, but I don't think they used it.
okay,
in the movie.
that sounds stupid.
I'm
Kimberly,
laughing with you.
yeah,
I'm
Tommy-
laughing
Pink Ranger
with
has
you.
the lasso
Yeah,
thing.
she had the whip. Tommy got to keep his weapon, which was the little saber.
Yeah, Saga, but I don't or Saba,
Saba,
but I don't
yeah.
remember like Saba ever like he throw it and just like spin around.
Yeah,
and
Saba
around.
didn't do that. He did have the little white, little
Yeah.
What
red
happened
eyes.
to the like?
Well, that
That
was
was
the
Green
Green
Ranger.
Ranger.
Yes,
That was the Green
But
Ranger.
That was just season
the dragon
one.
dagger. Yes.
Yeah.
People
Yes.
caught on that he was blowing a flute through a mask that like had no mouth.
Again,
Don't worry about
again,
it.
the comics explain like he's not actually playing it, like, but it's a connection between his helmet and the.
Sure it
Yeah.
is.
See, things we
It's
should know.
explained
Sure it
in the
is.
comics anyway.
Makes
But is that
total
canon or
sense.
not canon?
The comics should be canon, in my opinion.
So, have you guys seen the video on Jason David? I think he posted it on his Instagram where he was at a Comic-Con with one of the ninjetti actors who had been in who played a Power Ranger later.
Yes.
And they were comparing their like morphin like movements. And the other guy was like, it's morphin time. And he did like 8 different movements. And Jason David Frank was just like, it's morphin time. And he just stuck his hands out.
I will say, as the seasons gone further,
More complicated.
The morphing sequences got really complicated. Like the Zero Rangers had to do like this, and then they did this. I know you can't see me, listeners.
It's pretty much the
so
YMCA. Like you're
And
missing
then
out.
the Turbo Rangers had to use a key to, because turbo cars, and they had to do all these, and then
It reminds me of Sailor Moon, where they make fun of how long it takes Sailor Moon to like ascend and become Sailor Moon. And so, like in this movie, one of the first scenes where they morph, they're fighting them, and then they're like, it's morphin time, and they all have to morph. And then by the time they're all done morphing,
They're all
all
gone.
the bad
It's
guys are
gone.
gone. And I was like, how long did that take? Like 5
it
minutes?
took a half hour. I mean,
Like, where do they go when they morph? Like, can they not be attacked while they're morphing? Like, I have so many questions that give me.
it's a respect thing.
Did not think about.
You got to play by the rules, so they're not going to attack you
Right,
while you're
yeah.
morphing. It's a respect thing. It's,
Okay.
it's a Red
okay.
Bull. It's like whenever a team
He's like
calls.
halfway, like waist down, suit up, still like, knocked out.
It's like when a football team calls timeout. The linebacker does the other line and it hits the quarterback in the huddle. You know, like,
Right.
it's
Yeah. Can't do that.
respect
Can't do
thing.
that.
Gotta respect the huddle.
So,
I'll kill you in a minute, but for now, you go ahead and do your thing.
Right.
obviously, the command center was a little different, a little more high tech in the movie than it was in the television show. They used like I mentioned earlier, they used the same Zords and theme that they end up using in season 3, but in the movie they used Dulcia, who was
Girl David Bowie.
David Bowie, basically. I was reading up on her. Apparently, she had an ovarian cyst. Like during production of the movie, she had to be hospitalized. They ended up recasting the role to get this Mariska Haggerty from Law and Order SVU.
Cannot
But
picture.
they went back and looked. They're like, this role wasn't right for Mariska, and the other girl had recovered out of the hospital. So they reshot those scenes with the original actor or actress.
What a roller coaster ride
What-
that was.
Yeah. So, but I'm thinking, wow, Mariska Haggerty.
Mariska Hargitay?
Either way, I love her in Law and Order SVU, but I cannot picture her in the Power Rangers movie.
No, I cannot.
She already appeared in the worst movie of all time. That was the Mike Myers, The Love Guru in 2004.
Did not see that.
She was in that movie. Don't see it. It's
Will
awful.
not
It's
see
awful.
that.
It
Yeah.
is legitimately one of the 5 worst movies ever made.
Wow, okay.
But yeah, I mean, that's coming from me who tends to enjoy a lot of things. But
What did I call her? I was like, oh, it's
girl David Bowie.
yes, 100% because she turns into an owl just like he does in Labyrinth. But also, it's like Xena Warrior Princess and Poison Ivy had a love
Yes, had
child.
a love child. Yes, exactly. In the show, which they end up using, the whatever footage, but in the show, they get their powers from Ninjor, who's just this big like Shogun looking warrior, all blue. He sounds like Dudley Do Right. Yeah,
Checks out.
Yes, it does.
Real quick to go back to Xena Poison Ivy. I remember as a child having a giant crush on Kimberly.
Well,
being
all
like-
the boys did.
Yeah.
Yes.
But to be like, maybe this thing works out with like Tommy and that lady because, the 2 popular people and then Kimberly's available. So maybe this
Maybe
works
this
out.
works
for me.
out. Yeah.
Little Kyle sitting on the couch.
Maybe. I just love how she was like, everyone's died trying it. And Tommy was like, well, but we're going to do it. And then she like kicks him on his butt or whatever. And I just thought it was hysterical because like that is Tommy's character where he's like, no offense, but I'm built different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The other major difference that is very clear by watching the third act of this movie and the television show, this movie tried to use CGI footage, and I say tried very loosely.
Tried.
We were talking about it earlier when we were eating our supper tonight, and I think it was you, Kyle, who said we know it's early on.
Well,
in
the
CGI
director said, if you go watch the behind the scene documentary, and the director did mention like they did a lot of practical effects in this movie, which a lot of it's like wires because you see them flipping and flying everywhere. But a lot of it, CGI said, wasn't as used as it is today. It definitely was a lot more expensive than the budget that they had. And it also took a whole lot to render it. So they didn't use it, hardly any of it. If anything, they used like practical and then like still some studio effect type thing.
So my counter to that was Jurassic Park came out 2 years earlier.
Yeah.
It
Right.
still holds up today.
I mean,
And
you
Toy
don't have
Story
like $1
was
billion,
released that summer.
but-
Oh man, I didn't thought about
Toy
that.
Story was released that summer using nothing but animation and CGI.
Look.
You know, well, I don't know if that's CGI.
Excuses.
But still.
Yeah.
So the Zord footage looks really bad, but compare it to what they end up using in season 3, it looks so much better.
Look,
on the
maybe they
television
spent
show.
too much money on the music budget because the music was fire.
It's good.
The
Okay?
music was fire.
Red Hot
Like-
Chili Peppers, like higher ground. I
Van
think.
Yes,
Halen.
Van Halen.
Yep.
Yeah. I feel like there was a point in the 90s where Van Halen was like, we've done the whole like record selling album, greatest rock band of all time, whatever. And they were like, you know what we're really going to do? Soundtracks.
Well, they're like,
Soundtracks. Because they're on the Twister soundtrack
Yeah.
as well. And so it's just like they are the background music for some pretty dope movies.
they're like, well, grunge is taking over everything right now. We're
Right.
kind of out, but movies. Have you thought about
Movies.
this?
Yeah.
They're not going to put a screaming guy in a movie. They'll put us in there.
That's right. That's right. Rock.
Yeah.
So one thing going back to the footage, because I do want to get back into how good the music was. One thing I did appreciate about the movie, and you can do this in a movie and not so much in a 22-minute episode of television, we saw the Zords fighting individually. You did not see that a lot on the television show because, I mean, you brought the Zords out and you immediately combined into the Megazord.
Right. Right.
You did not, and usually only like the Red Ranger Zord was only equipped to fight by itself anyway.
Right.
But in this, you saw the Falcon and the Crane going around and shooting
Right.
things.
And the
you
frog
saw the
with his
frog
tongue.
with the tongue. Holding on. You had the bear doing stuff. You had
I'm
the
a
wolf.
frog.
You had,
Yeah,
the,
I'm
you
a
had the
frog.
wolf grabbing on. Everyone was getting involved, and I did appreciate that. I also, as a kid and as an adult, really appreciated the fact that they killed the Ivan Ooze, who was played by Paul Freeman, who just ate up the scenery, chewed up the scenery. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
Oh my goodness, he was having.
Oh, yeah, he was having a
time
blast.
of his life, and I loved it. But they defeated him by kneeing him in the crotch,
Yes.
and he fell
Yes.
into Ryan's comet, which is not
Correct.
a real comet.
I feel like he was basically like my inspiration for this is Wicked Witch from The Wizard of Oz, but purple.
Yes, pretty much.
Especially with the crows. Fly!
Yeah.
Fly! It's like, okay.
Pretty much.
Ivan Ooze had
Too
a
much
major
fun.
comeback, like within the last 10 years, I think, whenever it was, where Marvel came out not Marvel, Sony, or Fox, with the X-Men movie with Apocalypse.
Oh yeah,
Because Apocalypse has like such a very distinguished face, like a certain face, you know what it is. And there was,
poor Oscar Isaac.
yeah, there were other images that came out of like, this is going to look like who we think it's going to look like.
Right.
Because there was like an original, like I think like a bust or whatever
Right.
with the head and stuff of a production company that put it out. They were like, originally we're going to do this, and then they did this instead.
Also, when he showed up, I was like, I'm pretty sure there was a Buffy villain that looked just like
Probably.
this guy.
But whenever they officially announced that Apocalypse, like it showed the first picture, everybody's like, "That's Ivan Ooze from Power Rangers. We've seen him before." And you go look, and it's very like watching
guy's
him
like,
again.
How dare you?
Yeah.
This is an original piece.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
came up with this.
Yeah. So you go
Okay.
look at that now, like it's definitely as soon as he popped up on the screen, it's like, wait, why do I remember this song? Oh yeah, Apocalypse.
So one more thing I want to add about this movie, and then I want to hear all of Ashby's questions.
Oh, Lord,
because
okay.
I want
Okay.
to see how well I can answer these without dying of laughter from anybody.
Okay.
This movie introduced a character named Fred, who was a kid, and Fred, he played a part in
Arguably, also one of the heroes of the movie.
he is.
I mean, he helped save the parents from them.
That's right.
The zombified parents who were under
Right.
mind control, walking into a pit by spraying them with the power of water. So, but Fred, he never shows up again in any Power Rangers capacity, even though
What are
they
you talking about? He's the Gold Ranger.
No, the Gold Ranger was actually played by Jason. By Austin St. John in season 4 of
Wow.
Power Rangers Zeo.
Way to
He
steal
got
that
his
little
money.
kid's idea.
He's like, I left in the first season because
and
of
then
money,
the,
but I'm
and
back.
then the Silver Ranger shows up in season 6. Anyway,
Like, how much money
Man,
do you
that
need?
kid was talking about how he wanted to be the Silver and Gold Ranger, and they were sitting at that table and they
they're
were
like,
like,
"Oh,
that's a great
there's an
idea."
idea. Hey, Austin St. John, we'll give you more money to come back.
I'll
Go
say,
ahead,
John,
kid.
what will it take to bring you back? I need $100,000 and the gold costume.
Yes. So they did end up casting a kid as a Power Ranger 3 years later in season 5 Power Rangers Turbo. The kid who in the show was named Justin Blake Foster. He was like 11
Checks
or,
out.
11 or 12 years old.
Heard it both ways.
I think it's Foster, Blake Foster.
Oh, comment a psych joke.
I know. I'm so proud
So
of you.
proud of you.
I've been around long enough.
He was like 11 or 12 years old, and when he would morph, he would like grow into like adult size in the morphing costume. Like it's like that's not how this works. And it was so stupid. And it was almost the reason that Power Rangers, they almost like ended their run then. Like it took another season.
They
that
jumped
was
the shark, if you will.
literally. It took another season of excellent writing and long-term storytelling.
Excellent writing.
I mean, by Power Ranger standards.
Okay.
Okay.
I just want to be clear.
And long-term storytelling for the ratings to go up that saved the show, and now they're in their 30th year. It almost ended 25 years ago.
I'm not hating on any Power Rangers writers. I'm just saying that I'm pretty sure 4 different characters said yeehaw 4 different times in this movie.
I gotta I'll take that moment to say there's a lot of '90s things.
Oh my
A
god.
lot of
movie?
90s things.
Very '90s, like
Skydiving and rollerblading back to back, y'all.
First, it's amazing, but then second, the villain he's Ooze.
Right.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Secret of the Ooze came out just a couple years before. Nickelodeon.
It looks like Gak.
Gak is
Yes.
my other thought
Yes.
of like they're like, what can we sell? Like, nobody's going to buy the villain, but like, I guarantee you put some putty in a jar and like a
Right.
thing.
Some
Yeah,
purple
he's
putty.
literally dressed up as a purple clown. He's like, Ivan's ooze. And they're like, what do we do with it? Like, show it to your parents. Show it to your friends.
Yeah.
It farts.
Yeah, it literally, it's like if you turn it this way, like, and so it was perfect though because Nickelodeon's selling Gak and everything else at
Yeah.
the time. It's like, I guarantee you, Diet Purple, to put it on a shelf. Kids will buy it.
100%.
And so there's that much. And then the only other thing I'll throw out there before we jump into Ashby's, honorable, crazy questions about this is you were talking about the Zords. I was talking with a coworker the other day. She was talking about now, like, she has 2 sons. And she's talking about how expensive, like, Happy Meals are now. And she was like, you pay like $6, $7 for a Happy Meal, and the toys suck. Like, the toys aren't good half
Right.
all the time. There's
They
nothing in
had-
there.
Oh,
I
my
said,
goodness.
we're actually talking about a movie this week that possibly had the best toys ever at McDonald's.
I know, arguably like equal to My Little Pony.
Possibly.
I would say top 5.
It's
for
up
sure.
there.
It's up there because not only did you get a Zord, but you got a miniature Power Ranger who fit in the Zord.
Yes.
You got
You
an
did.
action figure that honestly you would find, okay, it wasn't as movable as when you'd buy it at Walmart or wherever else. or
But it
Toys
was
R Us.
very good quality.
But it was a good quality, like actual toy,
Right.
like action figure that did, like you said,
Yes.
had the Zord that they could fit in and like ride in the Zord and stuff. One for each character. You didn't like have to go pay a ton of money. Like you bought a Happy Meal.
Right.
This is what you got.
I remember I ended up with 5 of them we could never find. I'm trying to think, was it the Red Ranger or the Black Ranger? But I definitely had the Blue Ranger and the White Ranger. The Blue
Yeah,
Ranger's coming back
man.
and
I was about to say,
haunting me again.
yeah.
But those toys were
Top,
fantastic.
like, man, we should do like top 5 McDonald's Happy Meal toys.
Honestly,
Like
do some
Power
research on
Rangers,
it. They
Trolls,
they had
Hot Wheels,
the teeny beanie babies.
teeny beanie babies, and miniature My Little Ponies that came with like a brush and everything.
There were ones I'll never forget. It's the only time or at least the first time I were doing this is way off topic, but Looney Tune characters, but superheroes.
Yes.
So you could get Bugs Bunny, who had a 2-piece clippable suit that made him Superman.
Yep.
Taz was the Flash. It was the same way you had a Flash or a Taz action figure, but then a Flash 2-piece costume clicked on. You had Daffy Duck was Batman, and then
Makes sense.
I want to say it was, I can't remember her name, but like Porky Pig's gal friend, she was Wonder Woman. I don't
okay.
remember.
Interesting.
But
I don't. Yeah.
I don't remember either. But like if you go back, like I remember begging my mom for it during summer, but I was like, can we call McDonald's before we go to make sure the new one's in this week? Because I need the new one. And so I would beg. But either way, great things. Definitely throw that back to you. But it's definitely one of the all-time greatest toys line for Happy
Absolutely.
Meal line anyway.
And I will say this for all the faults of this movie, and maybe it's just because I have such fond memories as a kid loving this. I'm not saying I would go back and watch it like every month or every 6 months, but I still love this movie. I know it has its faults. I know it's far, far from perfect. I know it's cheesy, and I don't care. It is a wonderful love letter to my favorite superhero franchise as a child, and even now as an adult. Even like I still get into this on the comic book side more than any Marvel or DC character. Although Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, may change that. We'll see. But I love this movie. It is the best Power Ranger movie they've ever put out, which there's not a lot of competition there. Power Rangers Turbo actually did tie into the show a couple of years later, and it sucked. And the 2017 Power Rangers, like reimagining kind of a darker tone. They had good intentions, and it wasn't awful, but it was not Power Rangers. It was something a little different that they tried to make into Power Rangers.
It was more Transformers.
Look, as someone who's seen Twister, Spice World, and The Covenant probably a combined 60 times, not going to throw any stones about watching things you enjoy, regardless of content
I'm just saying,
or
I feel
quality.
like 60 is kind of a low number. I feel like we've watched Twister 60 times so far this year at my house.
Look, every time there's storm warnings, Twister. And I'm not saying it might be like, you don't wash the jersey kind of situation. I'm just saying 100% of the time so far in my life, if there's tornado warnings and I'm watching Twister, nothing bad happens.
That's true.
That's all I'm saying.
Erica had
That's
lived her
fair.
dream a couple years back. I don't remember if Eric went with us or not, but because in Twister they tear up a drive-in theater. Her
Yes.
dream was always to see Twister at a drive-in theater.
Oh, man.
And they came out in Raleigh or
I would
around
love
there.
to see
So we
that.
drove out and watched Twister
funny.
at the drive-in that year.
Yeah.
So, okay.
So Ashby, yes, you had questions. You were texting me, and I was watching Survivor last night. But I was like, you know what? I'm just going to say, ask your questions.
Okay.
Any thoughts you have, anything that you feel like I can address.
Okay.
And Kyle, if you want to jump in, or just
imagine
if you want to
Ashby's
get
like-
some popcorn, I mean,
That's why I should be like, this movie's dumb. And Eric's like, I can't answer that.
I will throw this cup at you.
This is stupid. Eric's like, you're stupid.
It's the whole movie.
And that's how the podcast ended.
This whole hour and a half is a
we
block
didn't
of
make
cheese.
it. We made it eight ninths of the way through the 9 on the 90s podcast.
That's right. Yeah. So I got about 10 minutes into this movie.
That's good.
And I had to text Eric because I had a realization that as a child, I remember watching Mighty Morphin Power Rangers all the time, right? And I had a kid that I was really good friends with down the street, and we would get together, and he would be the Red Ranger, and I would be the Yellow Ranger, and like he would get down, and I would like jump off his back, and we would do flips, and we would like morph. So like I was into it, right? And about 10 minutes of watching this movie, I realized that I was a surface fan because I had no idea what was going on. I mean, honestly, like I didn't even make it past the Star Wars like intro before I realized that I had no concept of Power Rangers lore. Like I had just been tuning in whenever it was on my TV and I was flipping channels. I was like, oh, look, the Power Rangers are fighting Rita Repulsa. And I knew what they looked like. I knew what their colors were. I knew what their animals were. I knew that the Zords combined. And I knew that every day, every episode, they would fight a new villain that Rita Repulsa created from clay or whatever. That's it. That's all I
think that's
knew.
about all they gave us.
That's all I got.
Pretty much. There's a few more things they gave us, but that's the gist of it.
And then I hear Eric talk about like the seasons and the plot lines and the replacements and the power, and I'm like,
Over my head.
Yeah, when was any of that happening? Because I missed all that. And so I got 10 minutes into this movie and I was like, Eric, help. So then I started out with, I was like, I think that I don't remember half of what I think I remember about the Power Rangers. So then my first thought was, is this canon, right? Like my first thing was, am I watching something that I'm supposed to remember happened in the TV shows? Because I got nothing. And Eric's like, no, this movie is not canon. So then at least I felt better about like, okay, I can just enjoy watching this movie, not having to worry about anything else.
See, I wish I would have been like you and asked Eric. Instead, I spent 20 minutes on Google trying to figure out, where does this fit in here? Where are these suits at? Where are the ninja costumes? Where did this come and go in this? Was
Right.
this between what season did this happen? I'm reading all these giant articles.
Nope.
And nobody simply says
Did not
the movie
Google.
was not canon. It
Did
was
not
just
Google
like,
it. Eric did.
all the things. Eric knew. You should
Yeah,
Go
exactly.
to your resident expert
That's
next
right.
time. Google
I'll know
cannot
next
solve
time.
everything.
Then I
true.
called Lord Zed Rita's inside out boyfriend because I couldn't remember his name.
Now, to be fair, they got married in season 2.
Okay, Rita's inside out husband.
Yes.
To be fair, they did like make him a little bit better in this movie. If you watch him in his scene, his brain is moving.
Yes.
Like that exposed brain he's got up there.
Early Lord Zed, he was introduced. He was a purely an American villain. He was not in the Japanese part of the show. He came in season 2, and the first 20 or so episodes, he is downright terrifying to kids. And so
his insides are on the outside.
Yeah.
and he's got this deep, menacing voice. Robert Axelrod, or I cannot remember his name. I think it's something like that. He did such a fantastic job just creating this menacing character who you knew was not going to take nothing from nobody.
That's right.
To the point where parents wrote and called Fox Kids and complained that they were he was scaring their kids. So they toned him down by having one of his minions slip a love potion into his drink. And so when he saw Rita come back, like he had banished Rita off the moon palace,
Yes,
whatever.
yeah.
She came back and he fell in love with her, and they had married, and that toned him down some.
Okay.
So he was
Interesting.
actually, he was very toned down, even though his insides are on the outside. There's actually, I don't want to go too deep into this because there's current comics lore explaining that he actually used to be the same race from the same planet as Zordon.
Okay.
Spoiler alert, everybody. We didn't give any spoiler warnings for this or the Mighty Ducks, by the way. Spoiler alert. For those of you who read the...
I mean, come on. Who is our age and hasn't seen the Mighty Ducks?
Exactly. Besides Ashby. But he, since he was part of the same race as Zordon, and they actually fought together as allies like 10,000 years earlier, but then he touched the Zeo crystal, and that's what turned his insides out and made him what he is, because he didn't have the purest of intentions to use the Zeo crystal for good. Anyway, there's your lore.
Yeah. Okay. So then I got so discombobulated with what I was watching, I texted you guys something that made no sense. So that was fun. And you guys were like, Ashby, that text barely had words. And then I went back and read it, and I was like, yeah, that doesn't make sense at all.
Are you drunk?
I might have been. I was drunk on watching them backflip. I was like, oh my God, I'm so dizzy.
More backflips than a high school
many
cheerleader at a
backflips.
basketball game. I mean,
Also, Tommy had the best one-liners per usual.
well, duh.
Okay, then I got to a point where I did not remember in the TV show. In my mind, Zordon was like Captain Planet, right? So like by their powers combined, he shows up, he tells them what to do, they save the day, and then he gets hurt, and Kimberly's like, he's like a father figure to us. And so I texted Eric, I was like, was he like a father figure? Because I did not get that.
As
from
a
the
child,
TV
I
show.
totally did.
Yeah, as a
'Cause
child,
I remember
like,
as a child seeing that and be like, oh no,
Because then I was
Zordon.
like, don't they have parents?
They do have parents. Kimberly's parents are divorced. So that might play into how
Okay.
she feels. I
Okay.
guess, because in the show, there's actually an episode about
Right.
how her parents are coming to Parents' Day, but this is the first time they've been together
Right.
since they finalized their divorce, and she was
Well,
really
like
nervous about
the
it.
rest of them seem upset at what has happened to Zordon,
Mm-hmm.
and they're committed to saving him, but she cries like 5 times about it, and I'm just like, I mean, it's sad and all, but I was just
Once
like, this is very dramatic.
the little kid that had a giant crush on her is like, don't worry, Kimberly, we'll save the day.
God, her and Tommy, I was like, this is over the top, man. Like it's just, anyway. Then, so I asked about the parents, and you were like, as far as we know, they all have parents. And then I said, I said, this is about the time that the giant crows showed up, and then they went to find Althea. Wasn't that her name? Dulcia,
Yeah.
whatever. And I was like, I'm getting real like Nick's vibes here. And I was like, I said, were the writers watching The Wizard of Oz on cocaine when they wrote this movie? It was almost like the writer's room was multiple people, and they all came on the first day to start writing the script for this movie. And one guy was like, my favorite movie is Labyrinth. And one of them's like, my favorite movie is Wizard of Oz.
Go with it.
Yeah, and then one of them's like, my favorite movie is Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark. And so they're like, cool, let's combine them. See what happens.
Call Paul Freeman. See what he's doing.
Star Wars, let's just throw it all in here. Like,
So you mentioned the crows. They're tingas, is what they're called, and they're actually used in season 3. But
also, they have regular human voices,
Yes,
which
they
was
do.
weird because he creates them and they just like, caw, caw, and then they go away. But then they come back and they're like, yo, boss, what's up? They have like Boston accents. And I was like, what is
they
happening?
really got acclimated to the culture of America.
In the 30 minutes they were
in
alive.
the 30 minutes,
Yeah.
they're really fast learners. I mean,
They were like, boss, the car. We parked it in the wrong place. They got away. I'm like, what is happening?
Go Red Sox.
Like 2 hours from car to that.
It didn't take long. I figured it out.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Then I said, did Xena and Poison Ivy have a love child? Because that's what Homegirl looked like. And she was like fighting and stuff. And then she kicked Tommy's butt, which was cool. Okay. Then she takes him to this like mythical temple. And suddenly she can't take him the rest of the way because she'll die in age. I was like, okay, weird sudden rule, but whatever. Then
The rules don't have to make sense to you.
none of this made sense.
They made sense to
Not
them.
a single thing made sense. So then she can give them the ninja powers with their new animals
It's their animal spirits.
to help them get to the temple, but she can't just restore their powers as the original Power Rangers. They have to go to the
They got to
temple to
retrieve
do
the
that.
great power.
Okay. Also, she makes it sound like literally every person who has tried has died. And then they literally have to go through like 2 steps, 2 trials, and it's theirs. And
Well, they have to get
it.
through her to get to those. And so I feel like she typically is like the gatekeeper.
She probably kills everyone.
Okay,
Yeah.
that sounds fair.
Because all of a sudden, like, until they mentioned Zordon, she didn't care about them either. Like, and all of a sudden her story changed real fast.
Also,
So-
those skeleton, like, whatever, they had the
Dinosaurs.
skeleton dinosaurs. I mean, I know they defeated them, but most people, like, okay.
I mean, I'm just saying it was like they lost powers and they got powers so they could get powers to have their old powers.
Would the 3 of us be able to stand up against those
I
dinosaurs?
mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
All Tommy did was like get on top of it and pull his neck bone out. Like,
I don't think we're getting on top of skeletons.
I'm going
like,
to try.
Look, no offense, but I'm built different.
Yeah. Ashley's like, you'll distract them.
You
I'll
guys
live.
distract him. I'll live. R.I.P.
Yeah.
Also, the Templestone Gargoyle Guardians, they looked pretty tough too.
So
Just
then
saying.
I had to text Eric because I remember him telling me after I had long quit watching Power Rangers that there were other there were Power Rangers in space and Power Rangers in the jungle and Power Rangers in the desert. I don't know. So then I texted him. I was like, oh my gosh, is this when they get their ninja powers? Is this where the ninja force comes from? And Eric did not respond.
Okay,
by that
so-
point, he was like, I'm going to explain it to her later.
So, okay. So, you are mixing together a lot of different seasons.
Okay.
So,
Look, I didn't write it.
season 3 of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, they use the ninja powers.
Okay.
Not called the Ninja Force.
Okay.
Season 10.
those cool costumes back. Sorry, I'm not even talking on the microphone at this point.
Season 10 was Power Rangers Wild Force. They used like jungle animals there.
Okay.
Season 11 was Power Rangers Ninja Storm. So, like, I feel like you combine Ninja Storm and
I
Wild
feel like
Force.
I'm not the one that's confused, okay?
I feel like we just need to know, do they wear
I
the
feel like
ninjetti
the writers
costumes
are the
over
ones
again?
that are confused.
Yes. No, they did not.
That was a shame.
And then there's other ninja, like there's Mega Force. That was the 20th, I think the 20th anniversary. Where they, anyway. Mega Force was an awful season. So.
Oh man. Anyway, and then I had a problem because at this point in the movie we're almost done, and even though Kimberly is a full ranger in her own right, Tommy's had to save her like 4 times now. So then I had to text like, also, why is Kimberly constantly in need of saving? Is it because she's the pink one? And I was like, LOL. But seriously,
She just needs to step up her game. I mean, you don't see anyone saving Aisha.
Right.
I'm just saying.
Literally, Aisha was like the first one out the plane. She was like, bye, like
Yeah, Aisha don't care.
doing my thing. She
I
is
think
solid.
I think-
Kimberly's like, Tommy!
There's a moment where everything's very, like, I think it's where
You're not wrong.
Alpha's telling them, like, maybe there's enough power to send you to this other place, and they're all like, oh man, we've got to do this, blah, blah. You look at Aisha's face, she's smiling. She's like,
Right.
we got
She's like,
this.
yeah.
It's like, send me first. I'm ready.
Adventure
Like,
time.
I'm going to go kick some butt.
That's
yeah,
right.
On this
She
planet.
was ready.
Yeah.
And Kimberly's like, Tommy, what do we do?
This is my dad over here in the crystals.
Exactly.
let me ask my future husband.
I am distraught. Yes. Then the homegirl Poison Ivy shows up. And Kimberly's like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Calm
whoa.
Step
down,
aside
calm
now.
down.
Put your hands
Put some
back where
clothes
they
on.
belong. Yeah, exactly. Can we get this girl a robe? Oh, man. Okay. I think I had something to say about the CGI, but we've already talked about that.
CGI was awful.
And then obviously it got pretty preposterous. I think I actually used the word preposterous at one point where I was like, okay, this is just getting to be too much now, because now there's like sparkles in the air and like the force of their love and their power is like bringing him back to life. And now he's like Power Ranger Jesus. And it also restored somehow, like, it didn't just bring him back to life. It like magicked
the command center back.
the whole
It's a
command
life force.
center perfectly. And like R2D2's like, yay.
Oh, that was Alpha 5. Thank you.
Like tomato,
Look,
tomato. Okay.
Look, you say tomato, I say, Alpha 5.
Get it right. And then at the very end, I was like, nothing says achievement like lobster, fireworks, and Van Halen.
No, and that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic end. And I will go ahead and say real quick, this movie had something that we're accustomed to now in the present day. It had a mid-credit scene. Did you stick around
I
for
did not stick around for that.
Okay, so in the mid-credit scene, you have Goldar, who was one of the henchmen. And he's like, "Oh hell, King Goldar!"
Oh no, I did see that. Where
and then Rita and Zed come back, and they're like,
Yes.
"Uh oh."
Yes.
I mean, it's a little something, but
Yes.
again, it's something that wasn't
Wasn't
as
done back
prevalent
then.
in 1995. So
Yeah.
kudos, Power Rangers movie, you got something right.
Yes.
I'll throw it out there too. Goldar's costume in this movie is worlds better than just like the
Worlds
television.
better.
Like it was really good in the way it was done, and it's worlds better than the 2017 movie.
It also looked. So here's the other
Goldar
thing.
was awful in the
Goldar was just
movie.
gold.
Oh my goodness.
It looked very Egyptian to me. And so the thing that I always kind of loved about Power Rangers is like mixed messages, right? So like they weren't staying in a lane in like what I think is a really fun way. They were just like taking all of these different elements,
All these mythologies
and styles and mythologies, and being like, you know what, we're gonna put it in a blender and see what happens.
Yeah.
And that was really visually interesting as a kid, right? So yeah, again, would I watch it again? Probably
not. And I wouldn't blame
Did
you.
I enjoy watching it? Yes. Am I going to watch anything else Power Rangers related anytime soon? Probably not. I did see the live action movie a few years ago. It was enjoyable. Also did not understand most of it, mythos wise, but like
If they
pretty
come
good.
out with another movie, and there's talks that they are going to come out with a new like rebooted television show and movies through Netflix.
I mean, if it had some of the original actors, I've met Jason David Frank. He's
Rumor has it that
super nice.
the original Blue Ranger David Yost is going to be returning for the 30th season as a cameo. And
Okay.
that's a rumor going around. But in the event that they do something new, I'll catch you up before we watch it.
Please,
So,
please do.
Kyle, you have any thoughts, final thoughts on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie, or the Power Rangers franchise in general?
I don't have anything necessarily overly off the top, but I will say it's a movie I would probably, I know I'll watch it again, but it's one of those fun type things where it's like you forget all about it and then it pops up on Netflix or Hulu or whatever, like, oh, I'm going to watch that. But it's not typically something I'm going to look for to watch again. Versus like Ninja Turtles or something, I'll still pop on, or
I
Mighty
feel
Ducks.
like if I
even.
was babysitting one of my friend's kids, I would be like, let's watch the Power Rangers movie.
Yeah.
You know, like at a certain age, I think they'd really enjoy it.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. It's very much made for kids. Like, and I don't know if that transcends generations. Like where the rollerblading and the jumping out of planes and like the '90s things, if that still would like register with kids today,
Right.
But I think enough of it probably would, and it's probably safe enough. But I will say, like I said at the beginning of the episode, for me, it was just a big thing of something that you loved on television that they took directly from and made it into a movie.
Right.
Versus liking the Ninja Turtle cartoons and then seeing them as characters on a movie is different.
Right.
Versus these characters that are on television that are these actors wearing these costumes, like, and to take that and just to blow it up even bigger. You know, in the world we live in now, where you have like CW's Flash, and whenever they started talking about a Flash movie was going to happen, everybody was just like, Grant Gustin is our Flash.
Right.
Put him as the Flash.
Right.
And they're like, no, we can't do
It's
that. We got to do
movies.
this. It's
Yeah.
movies. It's different. And so for us back then, for us to go from watching something every afternoon or every Saturday morning to go to a movie theater and see the same thing but so much bigger
Right.
was a huge thing for me as a kid.
Yeah.
And I do think like Power Rangers, I do want to read the comics. Eric's talked a lot about them. And I do think there's a lot of depth there to make something really cool. Like, and even the same way they came out with another movie. I didn't like the 17 movie. I didn't walk out of it hating. It was one of those things like it's very different.
It
Again,
is very different, but it was good in its own
yeah.
way.
And like watching, again, same way I've thought about before, like practical effects versus CG, like their costumes were so much crazy that it's like I could never tell, like, is that really a costume or is this all just CG at this point? And I still don't know. Like I know I've seen costumes, but it's like, were those really there, or this just made to look like whatever was in the movie? But stuff that was overboard was a lot of, like I mentioned earlier, the line, like where like people were suspended on lines or strings, whatever, and like flips and all these other things. But to go behind the scenes and look at this, like you're talking about, like the bird, like the crow, whatever, people come flying in. There's a scene where you see them all in the distance, and I'm like 7 or 10, some like number of them all flying in onto the scene or whatever. And you just assume as an adult now, like, oh, green screen or just digitally thrown in there. You go behind the scenes and look, and they're like, no, we didn't have the budget for CG and all this stuff. So we hooked up a rig to a giant crane and lifted 7 to 10 people 400 feet in the air and just had them come in on this crane. Like, and you see it, like there's a big like square rig that's hanging from a crane that then each of these people are hanging from.
Sounds like some Fear Factor stuff.
For sure. And it's to see that, like, you know, again, in the movie, it's one thing, it's whatever, but all of a sudden to see it and realize it's real. These are people hanging from this thing, come flying into the scene. It's definitely creepy. There's an hour-long, roughly, behind-the-scenes thing on, I found it on YouTube. I don't know if it's probably other places, but I would say it's worth watching. It definitely gives you a lot more behind the scenes. It's got a lot of interview with, like, the director, some of the cast and everybody else, really just talking about, at the time, how things were different from the show to this, how things were really cool coming into this. You had a lot of some of the people that were behind, like, the stunts and everything else, like the stunt team leader. There was a whole issue of just even getting the stunt team in because they wanted to give the crew that did all the stunts on the television show their rightful credit and bring them to the movie as well. Plus, they're already used to doing these things that these Power Rangers do and all these movements and everything. And I think when they were bringing it to Australia, there was like a big ordeal of like use people here versus bringing somebody else. And so they had to redo the paperwork to say that the stunt team people, like that person they are the Power Ranger actors in the suit. Like all these other people are, these are the actors as the characters.
Right.
These are the actors as the Power Rangers in the suits.
They like almost had to reclassify
They
them.
did in order to get those people over there.
That makes sense.
And they do discuss, like Eric mentioned, like the suits are like 40 pounds, like carrying on. The guy mentioned like to the, department, the costume department, like these look cool and this is this, but if you could like open up like underneath the arms and like in the crotch area so they could move and do these things, a little bit easier, it'd be great. And like, oh yeah, no problem. They show up on set and no, like those were never adjusted. Nothing that was happened.
Right.
And there was just stuff that people were just thrown into and like people were really getting hit. Really things were just happening because they're like, well, just do this is going to happen. This is the only way we can get this where it actually looks good. Just let it happen.
Right.
I need to cut in with a correction.
Okay.
You asked earlier if they really skydove, and I was like, yes, my research indicates they did. I looked a little deeper.
I think they did.
They did not.
Aww.
Yeah,
It's on a green screen, right?
The skydiving scenes are cuts back and forth between real skydiving footage and a set replica of the prop plane in which the Rangers interact and jump out of. So, sorry to burst your bubble. They did not just dive out of the plane. So, my apologies for giving misleading information there.
The only reason I questioned it in my brain was because I know if you go now,
Bummer.
you have to like be attached to somebody for at least so many times.
Yes, before you
so
can jump by yourself.
But I guess in Australia, rules could be different.
The
They're
rules
like,
are down under. Yeah.
hey, you're jumping out, pull the string.
Yep. Good luck. Mm-hmm. Ashby, your final thoughts on Power Rangers the movie? Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie.
I mean, look, still want to be the Yellow Ranger. Still have the hots for the Green Ranger / White Tiger. Still remember how cool I found it all as a kid. Still can't take it seriously as an adult. That's where I am.
Fair enough. And here's where I will land on this. And apologies, but I'm just being real. Everything that we like as fans, whether it be Harry Potter or Marvel superheroes or DC superheroes or Ninja Turtles or whatever, Power Rangers, it's all stupid. I mean, and I say that in a sense that you can come at it from any kind of angle and say, this is stupid, it's not for me.
Right.
whereas others would disagree. Like, no, this has real depth. This has real, this is something that I really like connected with as a kid. This is something that I'm really I really love. So Power Rangers did not catch on the same way, that Marvel has got a hold of over the past 20 to 30 years, but it's still around.
Oh, yeah.
It's still around, and it's still, I would say a top 100 franchise, top 50 franchise, probably top 25 franchise. Depending on how, it's still a viable money-making franchise 30 years later.
Yeah.
And to me, I haven't seen any of the seasons all the way through in 25 years. I've seen bits and pieces of episodes here and there. Anytime they bring back an old character that I recognize, I'll watch that episode. But it's still around 30 years later. How many things can we say it's still viable after 30 years? Not many things.
Yeah.
So for those of you who enjoy it, enjoy it. If this is not your cup of tea, go enjoy what you want to enjoy.
That's right.
I hope it lasts 30 years just like this has. So thank you for joining our show today. Big shout out to Ricky Lyles because he gets mentioned in every episode for his contributions to our podcast. We hope you enjoyed our conversation about the Power Rangers as much as I did and much as we did.
Thanks for coming to Eric's TED Talk on the Power
Thanks for
Rangers.
coming to my TED Talk. If you want to talk more Power Ranger stuff to me, or if you want to just talk about the comics because they're so awesome, feel free to hit me up. I'll go ahead and give my plugs first. I can be found on Twitter and Instagram at EricaMac15. And I would be happy to talk about anything regarding this franchise with you, even if I would go ahead and say it. I'm not the most knowledgeable person out there. There's plenty of people who know all 30 years of Power Rangers lore, plus the comics, plus the video games, plus everything. And I'm just not that guy. But anything from the original top, first 6 or 7 seasons, I can probably help you out and have a nuanced discussion with you. So check me out on my socials. What you got, Kyle?
You can hit me up at _live_bright_. Truthfully, I'm not sure. I don't know what else to talk about at this point.
Cool.
We're going on. It's kind of late.
Yep.
My eyes are getting heavy. Palms are sweaty. Mom's spaghetti.
We had pizza tonight, actually.
Oh, that's true. Still
Hey,
Italian.
you're still in the right food group.
Yeah.
You can find me at Ashby Gray, GRAY, on Twitter and Instagram. And, music, travel, pets, whatever is happening in the MCU, Bucky Barnes Stan account, the huge.
All the important things.
All right, next week, it's our season finale.
Woo-woo.
The 9th episode of the 9 on the 90s season. We're already, at the end here. And we're bringing back Chad Casey, who filled in last week on the Friends episode. We'll have 4 of us here in the same room. We're doing 90s movie draft.
It's going to get real.
It's going to get really real. I'll go ahead and give you a brief synopsis of what that will look like. There's 4 of us. We're going to take turns drafting a 90s movie for our fictional Cineplex. We're drafting 9 movies each, so it's a big multiplex for each of us. Once the movie's taken, it cannot be taken by another person. And the movie must have been released in the 90s, like originally released. So if it was released originally December 31st, 1989, it's not eligible.
I'm sorry for Ashby to steal Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
You want the truth? You can't handle the truth. There you go. There's a little preview.
Little preview.
For my list.
There are no other restrictions. We had discussed, okay, you need to have a drama, you need to have a comedy, you need to have a kids movie, animated.
No,
you form,
no holds barred.
You form what you want your
That's right.
movie theater to be. It can be all dramas, it can be all kid stuff, it can be all sports movies, it can be whatever you want it to be. And then we'll send it to you, the listeners, to see which one you'd like to go to. It's not really a competition, but we'd love to hear your feedback after we do this.
But I'm going to win, obviously.
But clearly, I've got this.
I feel like I say it every time.
So make sure you join us next week for that. And then we'll look forward to the next season later this year.
Yeah, so excited.
Fun times.
Yes, fun times. Well, thanks for joining us again. Stay as cool as the other side of the pillow. Go Power Rangers. And we will see you next week.
What the what?
Go Power Rangers.
Morphin Time.
Bye.